Do you guys like the MCU? Probably not so much nowadays because it's been going downhill for quite a while. Well, I hope you're ready for MCU 2, because Mattel is looking to launch their own Mattel Cinematic Universe. I'm going to be defending Barbie in this video, but just know, I do not want a Barbie sequel, nor do I want any of these other movies that Mattel has planned.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Ken.
What an entertaining shitstorm this movie has been. Ben Shapiro is losing his mind over it. Just look at this video he put out. He destroys the Barbie movie in over 40 minutes. Look at how mad he looks. Dude, it's a Barbie movie. An amazing outfit, Ben. I love it. A lot of weirdos are saying this movie is a threat to children everywhere. I don't think this is the case at all. There are some sexual innuendos in this movie, but most children wouldn't be picking up on them anyway. It seems like this movie is either hated or loved. I lean more towards the loved side. I did have my problems with this movie, and I'll get to those. Don't get me wrong, there have been times when I've agreed with the anti-woke crowd. With movies such as the live-action Mulan, the newest Star Wars trilogy with Rey Skywalker, and then of course there's Velma. We all know what I thought about Velma. Greta Gerwig could have easily made a safe Barbie movie for kids, with a simple message about how we should all be friends, but her approach was much more bold. This movie has an unapologetic woman empowerment theme, and I think it's pretty successful in doing that. This movie's message is woven into the movie and the Barbie theme in general in an ingenious way that doesn't take away from the comedy or the plot. Before we get into the political message of this movie, I want to go over everything else. I love the set designs. The world building is amazing. You really feel like you're in a Barbie land in the beginning of this movie. The effects, the costumes, the way they presented the world of Barbie is great. Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling are amazing in this movie. Gosling is hilarious. And Margot Robbie was the perfect choice to play Barbie. And she's just a great actress all around. I loved her in the movies Babylon and I, Tonya. Michael Cera plays this random discontinued doll named Alan. His character serves very little purpose other than comedy relief, but I think he did a great job at that. This movie is fun, it's campy, it's clever. Watching it in the theater was an amazing experience. Everybody was having a blast. The movie starts with an homage to Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. Just like in Space Odyssey, this homage shows us little girls playing with baby dolls, until Barbie shows up. Gerwig replaces the famous black monolith that mysteriously appears to inspire humanity's evolution with a giant Margot Robbie Barbie doll. This scene is meant to satirize how baby dolls have been used to influence women's lives into motherhood since childhood. These baby dolls represent a traditional woman's lifestyle. The children breaking these baby dolls is supposed to represent them breaking free of this ideology. And so they enter the fantasy world of Barbie Land, where they have complete control over their fate. Barbies can be doctors, astronauts, presidents, you name it. As a young girl playing with Barbies, these girls decide what happens, right? They have complete control. That is until they grow up and reality sets in. Greta Gerwig sticks to her guns in this movie. She starts and ends the movie with a very clear message, and that's women empowerment. This message is at the forefront of this movie. It's not sugarcoated at all. And yeah, I guess I can see how that might irritate some people. Some people just don't like their movies to be politicized at all. They want a basic story with characters. If there's any sort of message, they want it to be subtle. They want a beginning, middle, and end, and that's it. They just want to be entertained. They don't want this movie telling them how they should think. I get it. But on the other hand, I don't think this message is a bad thing, that women deserve respect and human decency. This movie follows stereotypical Barbie, who's played by Margot Robbie, as she goes on a mission with Ken to the real world to find the person that's making her think about death all of a sudden, so she can change herself back to a normal Barbie doll like she's used to, and so she can carry on living in this fantasy world. Of course, when this Barbie is presented with the real world, things turn out to be a little bit more complicated than she imagined. A lot of the people that hate this movie share one common misconception: that this movie hates men. What I think these people are misunderstanding is what this movie is trying to say. Everybody wants to live a happier, carefree existence. And in this movie, neither Barbie Land or the real world figured this out by the end. It's told pretty plainly to the audience that equality of the sexes is a work in progress. And Barbie Land is just meant to be a polar opposite reflection of the real world. When little girls play with Barbies at a young age, they completely controlled their world. Nobody stood over them telling them what they could or couldn't do with their Barbies. They could imprint themselves on any Barbie and imagine themselves as anything. All of a sudden they're 30 and they exist in a reality where their power is very much limited. They're expected to live and look a certain way. Their ambitions are stifled, and the crushing reality of the world settles in. In this movie, when Ken goes to the real world, he learns about the patriarchy, and of course he likes it, but he doesn't fully understand it. And so when he goes back to Barbie Land, he introduces this new idea. He tells all the other Barbies and Kens how amazing it is, and by the time stereotypical Barbie returns to Barbie Land, this new strange patriarchy has completely taken over Barbie Land. Some people thought this was ridiculous, but I mean, it's a fantasy world. And since the beginning of time, as far as Barbie Land is concerned, there has never been a new ideology introduced. So now Ken comes out of nowhere with this new cool one. Oh wow, yeah, let's try it. It's stupid. It's meant to be stupid. Stereotypical Barbie works with her other Barbie friends in order to revert Barbie Land back to what it used to be. Because the Kens have taken over, they turned all of the Barbie houses into Mojo Dojo Casa houses. The Kens simply don't know what they're doing. This is Barbie Land, it's for Barbies. It's supposed to be a safe haven for girls, because men have the real world. By the end of the movie, Barbie Land almost reverts back to what it used to be. Only this time, they give the Kens a very limited amount of power, which better reflects the amount of power that women have in the real world. Barbie Land in this movie is not meant to be a utopia for men and women by the end of the movie. It's supposed to transform from a girl's dreamland to that of a polar opposite reflection of the real world. Because by the end of the movie, part of the real world has been introduced into Barbie Land. So from this moment forward, Barbie Land will change and adapt as the real world changes and adapts. Very slowly. Equality isn't something that's achieved overnight. It's achieved gradually, and I think this movie was trying to make that point clear, but a lot of people didn't pick up on it. There is a pretty silly part in this movie when Margot Robbie is sad because she doesn't think she's pretty, and then randomly a narrator pops in and they're like, Margot Robbie wasn't the best choice for this role because obviously Margot Robbie is pretty. It was just a cheap attempt at a laugh. It wasn't necessary. We all know that already. And as if it's not normal for pretty women to think that they're ugly. Even the most beautiful women on the planet believe that they have imperfections.
Do you feel sexy?
No, not when I'm being me. I've played characters where I feel sexy.
Some people complain that all the men in this movie act stupid, and that's yet another reason why this movie hates men. And yeah, the Kens do act stupid, but so do the Barbies. They're meant to be dolls, remember? The only smart character in this movie seems to be the real-life woman named Gloria, played by America Ferrera. The only other male characters in the real world that get any real screen time are meant to be stereotypical goofy, greedy executives. They represent the overabundance of power men hold in the real world. And yes, the current CEO of Mattel is a man. Granted, that wasn't always the case, and I'm not going to try to explain to all of you in what ways we still live in a patriarchy, because that would take forever. There's another moment that people are upset with, where the character Gloria says something along the lines of, "It's impossible to be a woman." And obviously, that's not true. During this scene, Gloria goes on a long rant about how women are supposed to behave in society. She's just venting her frustrations in this scene. It's like a disgruntled person yelling, "Kill me." When people say kill me, they don't actually want someone with a shotgun to come around the corner and put a slug through their brain. A lot of people are also upset that there's a trans Barbie in this movie, which is mostly just transphobic discourse, so I won't entertain it. But Ben Shapiro says something pretty ironic I'd like to point out. He says something to the effect of, "Wow, this woman's voice is deeper than mine." Whose voice isn't deeper than yours, Ben?
Wet ass P-word.
This movie also tells us that the people in the real world have a direct impact on the Barbies in Barbie Land, because there's a weird Barbie. Her hair is cut short, her face has been drawn on, because the toy in real life has been destroyed. I wish this movie explained why there's only one weird Barbie that was destroyed by its user, because you know how many Barbies are destroyed by their users? A shit ton. Unless this is one of many Barbie lands, which could very well be the case. Maybe this Barbie land is only supposed to be representative of Gloria and her children's play area, I guess. At the very end of this movie, Barbie decides to live in the real world, so she can experience life as a human. This is supposed to send a message to the viewer that even Barbie, who had experienced all the comically exaggerated horrors of the patriarchy, has hope that things will continue to change for the better. And so she wants to give real life a shot. She decides that she no longer wants to live in Barbie Land, where life was easier, but it wasn't real. She wants to give real life a shot with the hopes that she can be part of that positive change, which will in effect bring about the same change in Barbie Land for all of her friends. Barbie wants to grow as a character. She wants to exit the fantasy she's been living in, not unlike many of the young girls around the world who are trying to do the same thing. A lot of people think this movie hates Ken. I don't think it does. Ken is a severely misguided character who believes that he is nothing without Barbie. We're used to narratives about straight women hinging their self-worth and identity on men, but by flipping the gender roles of that dynamic here and making the man's identity dependent on a woman's attention and approval, Barbie highlights the ridiculous and limiting nature of external and internalized misogyny. Upon learning of the patriarchy, Ken believes that in order to live the life he's always wanted, he must introduce the patriarchy to Barbie Land, and by doing so, Barbie will be impressed by him, she will love him, and all of his dreams will come true. Barbie befriends him, and with her help, he realizes that he doesn't need her to feel complete. Ken only thought he needed Barbie because the world in which he exists told him that he did. Which is hilarious because the Ken doll in real life only exists as an extension of Barbie. Ken would not be a thing if Barbie didn't exist. What are so many women taught in the real world? That they're nothing without a strong, domineering man by their side. Ken's role as a man in Barbie Land is meant to reflect that role of women in the real world. Gender norms dictate that young boys can't play with Barbie, and in extension, Ken. So of course the Kens in Barbie Land would be strange, warped versions of real men, because they aren't played with by young boys. They exist in Barbie Land as young girls' perception of men. And perhaps this will change as society evolves, and Barbies and Kens are played with by boys and girls, and so the fantasy land of Barbie Land will finally be equal. This movie is supposed to be silly, you know, but at the same time, it has a very important message behind it. This movie shows us that instead of projecting their own imperfections or thoughts onto the Barbies, girls have been socialized to strive for an impossible doll-like perfection in their own lives. Barbie Land exists as a frictionless, imaginary world. There's no Fox News in Barbie Land, no religion, no culture. It's supposed to be a young girl's fantasy land. So the fact that there's so many people out there taking Barbie Land as like this secondary plane of existence that's supposed to be taken just as seriously as the real world in this movie is ridiculous. Barbie in this world takes a shower, but there's no water. She slides down into a pool that has no water in it. She floats down into a car that then drives itself. I also think it's ridiculous when people say that this movie is not for children. Do not bring your children to it. It will poison their minds. It will make them think erroneously that they deserve more from life. Wow. I find this so funny because this movie is made for moms as much as it's made for their daughters. Not to mention that men throughout the world are enjoying this movie just as much as the women. Do you guys know how long Barbie has been a thing? The first Barbie was introduced on March 9th, 1959. A lot of people's parents grew up when Barbie was a thing, and they played with Barbies when they were younger. So it kind of makes sense for the Barbie movie to be directed at the adults just as much as it's directed at children. A lot of people are also complaining about the fact that when Barbie goes to the real world, she's instantly harassed by like 20 men. Obviously, that's a comical exaggeration of what actually happens in the real world. But all of these things that happen to Barbie do happen to women. I know it might be hard to believe, but it's true. Of course, they could have made it more realistic, I guess. But we're also talking about a movie where people can travel between Barbie Land and the real world. The music throughout this movie is great, by the way. It ranges from funny covers to bouncy, infectious pop anthems. So yeah, overall, I really like this movie. Let me know what you thought of it in the comment section down below. Bonus review, I'm going to talk about Oppenheimer. Because of course it was Barbenheimer Day, and I had to see both. I loved Oppenheimer. But I must admit, it's a tedious movie. A very dialogue-heavy experience. This movie follows the events of Oppenheimer's life, leading up to and after the dropping of the bombs on Japan. Like usual, Christopher Nolan knocked it out of the park. And yes, I am a Tenet enjoyer. I know a lot of people didn't like that movie. I thought it was pretty cool. Not his best, but it was fun. The filmmaking in this movie is astounding. Most, if not all of the filmmaking in this movie is practical. That's including the scenes where Oppenheimer is imagining atoms swirling around in a circle. We get a first-hand look into Oppenheimer's mind. And seeing how this is a man who genuinely believed that he brought about the end of the world, yeah, as you can imagine, it gets pretty intense. Cillian Murphy was incredible. Robert Downey Jr. was amazing. Holy shit, this movie has a star-studded cast. Emily Blunt, Rami Malek, Florence Pugh, Matt Damon, Josh Hartnett, and all of these actors did a great job. Gary Oldman even makes an appearance. He plays President Truman in a very brief scene. I was the one that dropped the bomb, not you, pussy. The background music, while making the endless conversation more invigorating, did get a bit distracting at points because it's constant. The background music hardly ever stops. It did make scenes feel more invigorating, but at a certain point you start noticing the background music because the lead up just is too long. There's a ton of lead up to the Trinity nuclear test. The test itself is an amazing scene. I loved it. And there are moments here and there that I really liked. That's not to say that I didn't like the music. The score in this movie is beautiful and haunting. And to be honest, some of the most effective scenes are the silent ones, because the music is mostly continuous throughout the entire movie. But when Nolan wants to bring out the most intensity, he drops everything. And so you're just left there sitting in silence, experiencing this unbelievable moment in Oppenheimer's life. And it's so effective. The different ways that Christopher Nolan conveys anxiety and dread in this movie is phenomenal. Some of the best filmmaking I've ever seen. Something as simple as applause, he turns into a thunderous, anxiety-inducing sound. It builds tension perfectly. This movie seems to have two endings, which I thought was kind of weird. One ending is this speech that he gives after the bombings on Japan. This scene feels very naturally conclusive, and quite frankly, it's the best scene in the movie. But then the movie goes on for another hour, and this last hour is mainly about Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Lewis Strauss, and his campaign to ruin Oppenheimer's life. And while there are moments in the first half of the movie that carry over into this final act, the last hour of this movie feels extremely bloated, although I did love the ending. Hey, look, it's Einstein! There is one scene I didn't like very much. There's a love scene between Oppenheimer and this woman named Jean. So they're making love, right? And then out of nowhere, she hops off of him, walks over to his bookshelf, picks up the Bhagavad Gita, and she's like, hey, you can read this? And Oppenheimer goes, I'm learning. So she brings the book over to him, opens it to a random page, sticks his ding-a-ling back inside her, and she asks him to read a random passage. And guess what he reads? Hey, we're making love. Oh my god, you can read Sanskrit? I guess the lovemaking must have been pretty boring. He says the thing. I am become death, destroyer of worlds. His tagline, I guess. What's so silly is this happens 20 years before the bomb drop. So he just had that in the back of his mind this entire time. Also, the women in this movie didn't really feel that real to me. I don't know what it was. The two main women in this movie felt very much like extensions of Oppenheimer instead of real people. NPCs that exist to love Oppenheimer, and that's it. I would have liked it if these characters had a little bit more depth instead of women that were in Oppenheimer's life. Like, the only other thing we know about them is that they were once communist or something, and his wife sticks up for him through thick and thin. And Jean is just as shallow. She's this random girl that he meets, and I guess she was a communist as well, and she ends up game ending herself. I like the way that that was done. In real life, there's some speculation that it could have been a staged assassination of some sort, because people thought that she might have been a communist spy or something. I just think if they explored more of her character, it would have made her death more impactful. Cillian Murphy's performance when Oppenheimer finds out that she died is amazing. I just wish there was a little bit more to her character, so her loss was more impactful. But overall, those are very minor complaints to an otherwise amazing movie. So yeah, that's my Barbenheimer video. Let me know what you guys thought of these movies in the comment section down below. Thank you so much to all my patrons that make videos like this possible. I love you guys. If you would like to support me, you can head over to patreon.com/ElvisTheAlien, and you can join these people scrolling up the screen right now. If you haven't already, please check out alienclothing.com, my personal clothing brand. We sell shirts like this, which I love so much. If you want a little bit of spice in your wardrobe, just use code Barbenheimer at checkout to get 15% off your order. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.